It's so common to see e-scooters and e-bikes all around big cities, just like New York. It's called micromobility, and it was supposed to be the solution to transportation problems in urban cities. These scooters and bikes use clean energy like rechargeable batteries to fight climate change and make transport more sustainable and efficient. The micromobility market is expected to hit $300 billion by 2030, and micromobility startups are already pumping in billions of dollars into the industry to capture more cities around the world. This solution should help us solve climate change. So, why do shared micromobility solutions in Zurich emit more CO2 than the alternatives they replace? Hi there, I'm Cédric Bollag, and this is Tech Deep Dive, where we look at the biggest startups and disruptors in the tech space and examine their impact. Today, we are looking at micromobility solutions and seeing whether they help or harm the environment. Well, the problem isn't the vehicle itself. Shared micromobility, which allows users to rent and share them, is generally considered more climate friendly since there are fewer of them. They relieve the traffic problem and reduce CO2 emissions. But cities now have a different problem. It's not easy to integrate these new micro vehicles. We haven't had much in terms of scientific data concerning these vehicles, but a study recently showed at the ETH in Zurich revealed quite a bit of information. Chief among them is that the researchers not only considered CO2 emissions throughout the life cycle from production, operation, and maintenance, but also the substitution patterns during usage. This study used survey data from 540 study participants in Zurich over 90 days and recreated about 65,000 trips with 8 means of transport. They included all the data about weather and transport availability as well, just to show how people choose between different modes of transport and what affects their choices. Why is this important? Well, this data helps planners in research and in practice. Past studies have only relied on hypotheticals to calculate CO2 emissions, but we are now past the point of hypothesis. The data-driven analysis focuses on user preferences and includes the parameters needed to realistically model micromobility patterns. And what they found was actually quite shocking. Despite the famous saying, it turns out sharing is not caring. Sharing e-scooters and e-bikes is actually doing the opposite of reducing CO2 emissions, and this is likely the case everywhere, not just in Zurich. It turns out renting and sharing these e-scooters and e-bikes in Zurich is replacing more sustainable modes of transport like walking, public transportation, and cycling. See, it's not just about whether something has an internal combustion engine. Ultimately, the aim is to reduce our carbon footprint, and these vehicles don't help us do that because we rely on them more than we rely on more sustainable transport options. And in fact, privately owned e-scooters and e-bikes replace trips by car much more frequently and thus produce less carbon emissions than the cars they replace. So it boils down to one thing: ownership. Ownership is better for the climate. Now, this also has its own set of issues. Owners worry about maintenance, safety, and costs, and while there are some companies providing solutions, the fact is that people are hesitant to take on such an investment. And if cities are not willing to encourage people and create a real space for micromobility in their transport system, it's unlikely that the masses will make the transition wholeheartedly. So, what do? I think cities are still not ready to fully make that transition. Integration, micromobility, regulating them, and encouraging ownership of these vehicles will make them far more effective than sharing them. Plus, transport planners could work with providers to find better ways of sharing services. These shared vehicles might one day help commuters in outer districts cover the last mile so we can reduce the number of people in public transport during rush hours. There are ways for cities to make micromobility common. By 2050, 68% of the global population will be living in cities. So naturally, urban spaces will be crowded, and the demand for hassle-free transport will be through the roof. Micromobility can reduce a lot of stress and also help in the fight against climate change. We just need better plans in place for them. But what do you think? Is this only a temporary problem, and moving forward, we'll find new ways to fix this problem? Or should cities finally take the initiative and make the switch? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on topics about startups, venture capital, and new and upcoming technologies. Don't forget to ring that bell to get notified when we upload, and I'll see you on Monday.